Merry Christmas, everybody. Still happening. One of us is still in the Christmas spirit. It's the GCN Tech Clinic, where you submit your questions related to tech, bikes, equipment, and we do our best to answer them. Now, you can submit your questions down below in the comments section using the hashtag AskGCNTech. Without further ado, let's get into this week's first question, which is from Ramon Dominic Remila, who says, "Hey GCN Tech crew, I'm wondering why we don't see replaceable/removable braking surfaces on carbon wheels. This could solve the problem of the expensive side of our beloved rim brakes on carbon rims wearing out. Thank you."
Well, quite simply, I think it would put a massive complication into the production of wheel sets. It's going to add expense, a lot of bulk and added weight into the system. So I think that ultimately is the reason why we don't tend to see that. Although I can kind of see the thought process where they're coming from behind that. It would be a cool idea, but I think in reality, very difficult to implement.
Yes, and now we have the advent of disc brakes and all the investment and technology that's been put into that. It's a superior system. It's going to go down that route. So, yeah, I would say in the future, I'd just invest in a disc brake bike when you next change your bike, if you do.
Fair enough. Next question in is from Craig Nitolo, who says, "Hey GCN crew, I have a question." Fantastic, this is a great place to put it. "If I'm not using my tubeless racing rims..."
He said tubeless.
Tubeless?
Yeah.
Presumably you mean tubeless. During the off-season, like the winter months, should I remove the tyres, clean the rims and start with fresh new tape when it's time to go racing again? Yeah, I suppose you could do that. Whilst it's not really crucial to do that, it is good practice and good preparations for the upcoming race season. Clean your tyres all off, clean all the sealant out, and well, unless the rim tape is damaged or any visible signs of wear, you don't have to replace it. But like I said, it's good practice to start afresh with all the right equipment ready to go racing.
Yes, I agree. And I think the other thing is you'll actually check your tyres and see if there's any problems in them or any cuts. That you'll kill two birds with one stone. But then you'll also, that sealant can congeal, especially when it's stood still for like 4 months over Christmas.
Yeah.
You're going to end up just adding extra sealant in there and adding extra weight, and you want these performance wheels to be as light as possible. You've probably spent a lot of money on them, so totally agree. I think it's a good idea.
Okay, yeah, nice. Next question, who we
It's
got?
from Mate Hegedus. I think I nailed it.
You nailed it.
He says since September he's been cycling much more, which is great to hear, but he says one thing he's noticed is he's been getting pain in the outside of his foot after a longer workout. There are many factors: cleat position, wrong shoe size, and he thinks it could be down to his insoles. But because we haven't made a video on this, he doesn't think it's a common issue. Do you guys use the default insoles that come with your shoe, or do you use a specific one?
Well, I'll start us off. I tend to use specific ones which I had moulded for my feet actually a little while ago. They're getting a little bit tired now. I had them back from when I was racing, and they're moulded specifically to my foot. However, there are variations to account for this because you've got cycling shoes which have particularly flat soles. Some have some inbuilt arch support. So it's going to vary depending on the type and shape of foot that you have.
Yes.
Some people have high arch, some people don't. And also the cycling shoes you have. But the best bit of advice I could give would be to see an expert that can make an assessment of your foot and your riding style so that they're best placed to offer the advice suitable for you.
Yeah, and the thing is with shoes as well, is like you say in your message, it can be the shoe. Like, I think cleat position is more likely to cause problems around your joints, your ankle, your knee, your hips, and IT band and things like that, further up the mechanical chain, not so much on the foot. But shoes are incredibly personal, and that's one of the main reasons why a lot of teams don't tend to have a shoe sponsor. Riders have individual shoe sponsors because, brand X, some
what
people
works
might
for
find
one
it
doesn't work for another.
It might be really
Yeah.
comfortable, but it might be really uncomfortable for another person. So it might be your shoes. So I would suggest also maybe just going to a shop and trying on some other shoes, and you'll know when you put them on in the shop if they just feel like a slipper. Then go with those.
But don't walk around in new cycling shoes in the shop. That's frowned upon because it
Yes.
will scratch up all the soles.
Yeah. Next up, we've got a question from Naren Harry, who says, how many puncture patches can a tube hold before it needs replacing?
Oh, easy, 37. No, I'm just kidding. That's just me being silly, don't worry. I'd suggest a couple of patches is fine. After that, you might want to consider getting a new inner tube.
Yeah. It's good to save the environment, though,
Yeah.
and the polar bears.
Next question is from Nicholas Remillard.
Remillard.
Says, hey folks, can I apply dry lube on a wet lube chain and a cassette that were cleaned with a simple degreaser and a cloth? Does the chain and cassette need to go through a deep cleaning before changing the type of lube? I'm asking him for a brave 105 peasants that are considering doing it at home. Don't put yourself down. 105's the group set of the people.
It's not the group set of the peasants.
No, far from it. I wouldn't worry about overcomplicating that. If you've got dry lube on your chain and you want to use wet lube, put it on there. Yeah,
No, but he's saying he wants to apply dry lube onto a wet lube chain.
Oh, sorry, even if it's the other way around. The ideal situation, give everything a thorough clean and then change the type of chain lube you're using. Although, if you're going to go out on a wet, muddy ride, it's better just to put the wet chain lube on the top of the dry stuff. It'll work better anyway.
Yes, but the other way around, you might as well just keep putting wet lube on and not mixing the two lubes.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to get the benefit of the lower friction of a dry lube when there's already wet lube on there. So save your dry lube for when the chain has been properly cleaned. But like Alex says, if it's the other way around and you're in a pinch and you've got to leave the door and all of a sudden it starts tipping it down and you've got dry lube on your chain, then yeah, put some wet lube on, because otherwise the dry lube will wash off really quick.
It's one of those things, it's easy to overcomplicate it, but don't worry about it. Next question in, fantastic username. This is from Yogi Bear.
What, the Yogi Bear?
I presume so. They say, hi, sorry, I don't know how this works, but wanted some feedback. I bought a new road bike in October 21, and every new ride, since approximately 10 rides in, the seat post keeps slipping down. I've taken it back to the bike shop. They've tightened up and replaced the seat post clamp and also the seat post wedge. Oh, and the seat post, sorry. A recent ride, they've had the same issue. The bike shop has stopped responding now. What? Love the bike, but at the same time, it's kind of useless. What should I do?
Well, one first thing that he hasn't said in his message is use some carbon grip paste.
Yeah, normally that's the easiest solution.
So while, yeah, you can replace the clamp and stuff, you've not put this in your message, so I'm assuming you haven't done it. But apply some carbon gripper.
Yeah.
This is a special paste that you can apply where you have carbon or carbon and aluminium components slotting together in sliding locations of the bike. It just adds friction and stops things slipping.
It's got like a fine abrasive inside the sort of grease and paste to help the components grip together, isn't it?
Yeah.
Simple.
So try some of that and then let us know in the comments section how you get on, Yogi Bear. Next question is from Pete Warburton. Evening, lads and lass. I've recently refitted my mudguards for my winter months and have noticed my bike feels considerably slower with them on. I have fitted close to the tyres and they were the right size and I've checked nothing is rubbing. Feels like riding through custard. What is the aero penalty for a bike without mudguards? Or with and without mudguards? I can only imagine it's something to do with aero, hasn't changed everything else. Thoughts? Cheers, Pete.
Well, this is an interesting one because it's something that I did think about and I actually did take a look into this and we've got a video coming out in the coming weeks, I presume. And in the instance that I had a look at, it wasn't really a huge penalty. Of course, adding mudguards onto your bike is going to slow you down and there is going to be an aerodynamic drag penalty, but at your sort of average riding speeds, I didn't see that it made a huge amount of difference. However, if you're someone that's going out riding as fast as possible and riding fast-paced group rides, then you are going to notice
Pete Warburton
the difference.
definitely is.
Well, in that case, that's why he's finding that he's riding a little bit slower, and it's unfortunately the small price to pay for not getting plastered in mud.
Yes, there will be undoubtedly a significant aerodynamic penalty, which I would wager is going to be at least 10 watts, I imagine, and you will feel that going from one to the other. The other thing to consider is that you're probably wearing sort of bulkier, less aerodynamic clothing when you're riding a bike with mudguards, and that is going to slow you down 50 watts at 40k an hour compared to a tighter fitting.
Maybe that's why it seems like it's really obvious, because he's switched all his winter kit at the same time.
Yes, it's going to make a lot of difference. It is something that I do want just to actually measure precisely at some point, so I'm going to do that. Next question, Matthew Ho.
He says, I'll read it out, okay. He says, what is the purpose of the markings on the saddle rail? Does this mean that the tip of the saddle clamp should not exceed the end of the markings? Yes, it does. You've sort of half answered your own question there. So the markings on the saddle rail are to dictate the clamping area so that the clamp of the seat post doesn't risk damaging or crushing the parts of the rails which aren't designed to be held in that certain way. So stick to those markings and you shouldn't run into any issues.
The other the other reason why the markings exist is because of bike fit. They serve as like a little ruler, so you can precisely adjust and be consistent with the placement of your saddle.
Right, final question for this week's GCN Tech Clinic is from Ed Lazda. Says, hi, Alex, and supporting cast.
I'm just supporting cast now.
I love that you're now supporting cast.
Yeah, I'm just an extra.
Don't play it down. You're still the star of the show. I use 28C tubeless tyres on my road bike at 70 to 75 PSI, which I think is about right for 75 kilograms. Yeah, I'd probably agree about that. I'm getting lots of dents in the rims, DT Swiss R460s, from poor road surfaces in the country lanes. And recently, I've had to have the back wheel rebuilt because the tyres wouldn't hold air anymore. Would it help to increase the pressures to 80 or 85 PSI? Yeah, I think it would. Although, that being said, I would say the pressure that you're running is probably about what I would have recommended and advised. So it might just be that you've been really unfortunate and keep hitting quite a few potholes, in which instance a little bit of added tyre pressure isn't going to make a huge difference, but it will help.
Yeah, the other thing is I was intrigued by this because, I think at 28C at 70, 75 PSI, you shouldn't be bottoming out your wheels too much at that. So just double check your pump isn't telling porkies. Because I have come across a few pumps in my time that weren't calibrated right and definitely weren't the pressure they were saying. So maybe just double check that.
Yeah. Do you know the easiest way to tell if your pump's lying or not?
Here we go.
The nose will grow a lot longer. You know, like Pinocchio, when he lies, his nose gets longer. So if your pump has got a long nose on it, there you go.
Well, if you...
You're lost for words. Anyway, if you enjoyed this week's Tech Clinic, please give it a thumbs up. And if you've got any questions which we haven't answered, we'll keep submitting them in the comments section down below. And hopefully we'll get some in the coming weeks. Pinocchio, it's a story of Christmas, isn't it? Pinocchio's a Christmas story. It definitely is. I'm going to Google it.
Google that.